A woman's body plunges into the ocean in the middle, floating there for a short while before her eyes open in terror. Brandon wakes up abruptly and discovers it was a nightmare. He serves as the governor's daughter Ava's bodyguard, and ever since he let her mother get hurt, he has been struggling with internalized guilt. After arriving at the airport with Brandon, Ava meets up with her pals Jed and Kyle. The boys are upset that Brandon is joining them on their trip, but Ava explains that her father wouldn't have permitted her to go without security. Ava notices that there are unusually few people on the airplane as soon as they board and decides to seat in the back for privacy with the boys. The plane rattles a little bit just after takeoff, but this is usual. Shortly after, the aircraft begins to tremble once more, and the engine is audibly heating up. The pilot reassures the passengers that nothing is wrong and that they just happened to hit some birds by accident. But soon after, the aircraft begins to tremble once more, and one of the engines catches fire. When the pilot signals for everyone to buckle up, a portion of the engine breaks and flies off, hitting the side of the aircraft and killing a passenger, as everyone begins to worry for their lives. A shift in pressure is brought on by the wall break, and everything within the aircraft begins to fly off or shake. The bags all fall off and hit individuals in the head. Even when they attempt to cling to other people's hands, unbuckled passengers are flung from their seats and across the aircraft. A wall blows off in a matter of seconds, leaving a massive hole in the side of the aircraft and sending countless people flying away to perish. The wind is too powerful for Brandon to hang on to the floating man, and he gets blown away too. A second guy tries to hang on to the chairs, but the metal gives way too soon, and the few seats fall off while the guy is still seated. When a man is ready to collapse, a flight attendant rushes to help him, but she ends up falling with him. The plane crashes into the ocean, flooding it with water as soon as it hits the surface, losing the majority of its occupants in the process. As a piece of metal stabs Brandon, the impact pushes the seats forward, crushing many of the passengers to death. The aircraft sinks for a few minutes before becoming lodged on the ocean floor and coming to a stop. Ava, her pals, and flight attendant Danilo are all still alive since the plane's tilt has caused an airlock to form at the back. But Kyle's arm has a fractured bone. Concerned by the strange sounds they are hearing, the gang looks out at the lake. Rosa and her grandma Marty are taken to the safe location by Brandon, who appears out of nowhere. Danilo begins chest compressions on an unconscious Marty, and after a few minutes of nothing happening, Marty awakens. Rosa then inquires about her grandfather, and Brandon is forced to inform Marty and her that he tragically passed away. As soon as the group begins to worry, Brandon assumes leadership and helps to calm everyone down. They must remain cool and wait for rescuers to locate them because the airlock indicates that they are secure for the time being. When Ava looks at her phone, she can't get service beneath the waves. She points out that the plane has a hole in it and that they should swim out, but Brandon tells them that their chances of surviving in that manner are slim, so they have to wait. Danilo tells them that assistance ought to arrive shortly because the pilots must have asked for it prior to the collision. Brandon then clarifies that, just in case, they ought to have backup oxygen. Although Danilo claims that the aircraft has 2 emergency fuel tanks in the back, he checks on them and discovers that they are empty. At that point, Brandon offers to jump in and locate the medical oxygen tank that one of the passengers had, as Marty recalls. Marty asks him to bring her husband's hat before he goes. Brandon jumps in, swims down the hallway, and examines the passengers who have passed away in their seats. He removes the husband's hat that he discovers and doesn't realize is there something swimming by the window. Next, he locates the oxygen tank and fills it up as well, then he checks the hole. To his surprise, a shark that has entered through the hole attacks him as he chooses to swim on in an attempt to find whatever else he can take. Brandon is bitten by the beast right away, and he fights to get rid of it as best he can. In the meantime, the gang becomes concerned as they see that there are ripples in the water, which suggests that something is wrong. The waves abruptly stop, and Brandon reappears, urging the others to keep back and bearing some rather serious wounds on his body. He gives the headgear and the oxygen tank to the others while panting severely, then he apologizes to Ava. The gang watches as the shark's tail pokes out as it devours the unlucky man as he is hauled back into the sea. Fearful, the gang retreats to the employees' area and decides to stick with Brandon's suggestion to wait. Subsequently, Marty volunteers to tend to Kyle's arm, revealing that she met her spouse while working as a nurse during the war. When Marty repositions the bone, Kyle cries out in agony. She makes a makeshift splint out of bandages and some thick magazines. A helicopter is circling the area outside, looking for the downed aircraft. Although they don't see anything right now, they have priority orders because they know the governor's daughter is among the victims. Returning to the survivors, they hear some creaking and briefly see movement inside the jet, giving the impression that it could crash again at any time. Danilo unlocks the oxygen tank Brandon grabbed because Jed is getting too negative. They immediately realize that sharks have entered to consume the drowned remains as they notice the water turning crimson and hear noises. The plane begins to tremble abruptly, and they witness sharks swimming by their window, striking various pieces of the aircraft as they pass. Rosa is starting to grow too terrified, so Ava reassures her that they will be saved. But the helicopter's fuel is running low, and it hasn't found anything yet. After monitoring the water level, the gang determines that they have around 3 or 4 hours left before the water reaches the back. They are unsure about the plane's durability, though, because they can hear the metal groaning and see some water seeping through the ceiling. Abruptly, the aircraft begins to descend, tumbling for a few minutes while a number of pebbles tumble out of its path until it becomes trapped once more. The group is lucky to escape unharmed, but the water level inside the aircraft is rising more quickly as a result of this new angle. The party decides they have to swim out of the plane as it's evident the seabed isn't as solid as they had assumed. Rosa claims that she learned in school that sharks dislike bubbles, so they'll need to figure out a strategy to divert the sharks. The issue of being able to hold their breath for so long remains, but Kyle has an epiphany: some of the passengers were wearing dive gear. According to Danilo, such items are in the baggage hold, and they can enter through a hatch. The oxygen tanks are most likely empty though, or else they wouldn't have been permitted inside the aircraft. Ava claims she has to go to the bathroom and hides there, where she suffers a breakdown upon hearing the creak of the plane. She believes that the remaining dive gear might still be useful, but Jed is too negative. Rosa learns from Ava that it's acceptable to feel afraid after she emerges. The helicopter has only 15 minutes of fuel left outside. When they eventually come upon airplane parts floating around, 2 divers dive into the water to begin their hunt. They locate the jet quickly, and the moment they get nearer, the gang begins to gesture at the window. While the second diver goes to the window to reassure the survivors that everything is well again, one diver swims in the direction of the hole. He doesn't notice the shark until it suddenly materializes behind him, so the gang tries to warn him. When the diver glances back, he sees nothing, but when he looks at the plane once more, the shark has dragged him down and murdered him. The gang notices the diver's leg drifting away when they glance out the window after hearing several noises above the aircraft. The survivors glance down the corridor in remembrance of the other diver, but no one appears, leading them to believe he has also perished. They are forced to depart since the chopper is virtually out of fuel outside. They at least have the coordinates, and help is en route. Ava returns to the survivors and notes that they could grab the other diver's oxygen tank if he is dead. She can't be certain, but she thinks she sees a shadow when looking underwater. Jed steps onto the chairs in an attempt to gain a better look, but he slips and falls into the water. He reappears laughing, having been playing a practical joke on them, while the gang becomes alarmed that they are unable to see him. But because he doesn't emerge in time, the shark quickly tracks him down and bites him. The group approaches Jed as he fights off the shark's onslaught, grabbing hold of his arms and pulling him till they are out of the danger. Regretfully, it is revealed that Jed is missing a leg. As a result, Marty forces Rosa to remain behind the curtain as she tends to the wound. When Jed learns he won't be able to compete in any more triathlons, he sobs. Marty uses some seatbelts to create a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Ava offers to go look for the scuba gear because she's still determined to leave. Ava jumps, and even though Danilo unlocks the hatch and they find that the luggage hold is also flooded, she flashes a flare and scans the area, not realizing that there's anything else swimming behind the bags. She eventually locates the scuba gear, but just as the flare goes out, she is frightened by an octopus. When they notice that there is no longer any light, the others start to worry, but happily Ava soon returns with the tools. There are just 4 diving suits and masks when the group opens the luggage. They quickly examine the glass after hearing something hit the jet, but since there isn't a diver nearby, they assume it was a shark. Jed has passed away by the time they turn around again. When a desperate Ava tries to perform chest compressions, Marty pulls her back and forces her to face reality. Abruptly, the aircraft descends once more, but this time, it comes to a rapid halt when the cockpit fractures and functions as an anchor. They must leave quickly since the water is rising more quickly. They want to utilize the little oxygen canisters from the emergency masks to blast bubbles at the sharks, keeping in mind Rosa's interesting information. The issue of swimming such a distance remains, and Kyle breaks down, admitting to a traumatic childhood injury that left him a poor swimmer. But after hearing encouragement from Rosa and Ava, he decides to give it a go. Then, without delving too far into the water, Ava gathers every oxygen mask she can find. The ceiling is beginning to crumble, and the sharks are still striking the aircraft. As the group begins to change, Marty offers to be the one without a suit since, given her age, she would just make everyone go more slowly. When the survivors enter the ocean after bidding Jed farewell, they see the plane is gradually beginning to descend once more. The plane will soon fall as the cockpit suddenly stops fracturing and falls into the chasm. Rosa is asked to accompany Ava, who Marty asks to go first. When the girls discover a shark blocking their path while swimming, they quickly open an oxygen canister to frighten it away. They continue traveling after the path is clear, and shortly Danilo and Kyle follow. As the water rises inside the jet, Marty watches the young people leave, knowing she won't be able to make it. Instead, she stays behind and waits to be reunited with her husband. In a panic, Kyle swims back to stick his head out in the last remaining pocket of air. When a shark unexpectedly emerges from the baggage hold and bites Kyle, consuming him in a matter of seconds, Danilo tries to go back for him. When Rosa and Ava discover the dead diver and remove his tank so they can fill their lungs, a scared Danilo swims to meet them. Then Ava uses the tank to send Rosa and Danilo through the hole, but just as she is ready to go, a shark gets in the way. Ava swims backward and freezes, allowing the shark to enter without observing her. But her tail smashes her mask off. Ava then begins swimming toward the front after realizing that more sharks are entering the area through the opening. Ava manages to escape through the front hole just before the plane plunges into the abyss, but only because she manages to cling onto the seats and push through as the plane begins to plummet faster and the water pressure prevents her from moving. Ava can now begin swimming to the surface, but she soon runs out of air and is unconscious. Her body definitely quits swimming, but happily the floaties help her to rise to the surface, where she breathes and awakens instantly. When Ava can no longer see the others, she starts to fear, but just then, the helicopters arrive and manage to get her out of the sea. Rosa inquires about her grandmother, and Ava informs her that Danilo and she have already been saved. Rosa throws her cherished plush toy into the ocean as a final farewell to her grandparents before nodding off in Ava's arms. No Way Up, 2020 for a high-concept thriller with underwater tension. Underwater peril. No Way Up throws its characters into a heart-stopping survival scenario. A commercial airliner crashes into the Pacific Ocean, leaving a group of survivors trapped underwater in the wreckage, precariously close to a bottomless ravine. With dwindling air supplies and the threat of sharks circling below, they must find a way to escape before it's too late. A claustrophobic thrill ride. Confined setting. The film excellently uses the underwater plane as a single location, amplifying the claustrophobic tension and sense of desperation. High-stakes action. The fight for survival keeps viewers on the edge of their seats, with each attempt at escape raising the stakes and adding new dangers. Solid ensemble cast. The cast delivers believable performances, portraying the diverse group of passengers thrown together in this terrifying situation. A few leaks in the hull. Limited character development. Given the film's focus on action and survival, character development takes a backseat, making it harder to connect with some passengers. Familiar beats. The basic survival story might feel somewhat predictable for viewers familiar with the genre. Logic gaps. Some might find certain actions or plot points regarding survival implausible, breaking the immersion for a moment. A fight for life. No Way Up offers a simple message: the will to survive can overcome even the most desperate circumstances. It celebrates human resilience and the importance of teamwork in the face of overwhelming odds. All opinions in this summary are personal opinions. You can write a comment about your opinion. Thank you.